Look at your hand. No, really look at it. See the lines, the pores, the small twitching life beneath the skin. Ask yourself this. Did you choose this? You believe you're in control. You believe you're you because of the choices you make, the dreams you chase, the fears you hide. But what if all of it, every fragment of your identity, is just a predictable echo of something buried deep in your cells? What if DNA didn't just shape your body, but dictated your consciousness? They say DNA is the blueprint of life, but they never told you who wrote it. Imagine a script, 3.2 billion letters long, coiled inside every cell like a tightly wound secret. It doesn't just describe your body, it commands it. Your thoughts, preferences, your sexual desires, the fears that make your stomach drop when you're alone at night. What if they all stem from a molecule that doesn't care who you think you are? Take a breath. Now consider this. You are not a person. You are a pattern, an unbroken chain of chemical instructions muttering in biochemical rhythms older than language itself. Still think you're free? We'll start simply. Do you remember the first time you felt shame? That crawling sensation under your skin, that cold awareness of being watched, judged, defective? It wasn't random. The amygdala, hijacked by ancient genes, fired in a calculated cascade designed to protect the group at the cost of your self-worth. The body made you feel it, not to punish you, but to control you. Because DNA doesn't want truth. It wants replication. You are a vessel, a disposable narrator in a story about survival. And here's the cruel twist. This story isn't even yours. You are reading a script written millions of years ago, its pages copied and pasted through ancestors who never knew your name, who bled, suffered, and screamed without understanding the plot. You think your choices are yours. You think that fear of drowning, of falling, of rejection comes from trauma or logic. No, it comes from them, from generations past, encoded in silence. And what if those silent codes are still speaking? Picture your DNA as an ancient AI. Not artificial but ancient, primitive, mechanical, unfeeling. Its only goal, continue, and every trait you think defines you, your laugh, your rage, your sense of self, is just a mutation it found statistically useful. You were never chosen. You were selected, but not by intelligence, by chaos, by entropy weaponized into order. You see, DNA doesn't think in words, it thinks in outcomes. If fear kept your ancestors alive, you inherited the fear. If obsession led to mating, you inherited the obsession. If delusion helped avoid despair, your mind is designed to hallucinate purpose. Do you feel it now? That sliver of dread crawling up your spine? That whisper at the edge of your consciousness that something isn't right? Good. That's the story waking up. Let's go deeper. Ask yourself, what if you are not the reader of the story, but the narration itself? You think you're experiencing time, but DNA doesn't know time the way you do. It lives in a recursive loop of repetition, copying, editing, deleting. It doesn't remember you, it remembers success. The genes that made it this far are not noble, they're just efficient. So what kind of person gets remembered? The kind that survives, the kind that conforms, the kind that makes just enough noise to breed, then disappear. You think that voice in your head is you, but what if it's not? What if it's just the culmination of survival-optimized scripts running on loop? Consider the thought that just passed through your mind, the one you didn't speak out loud. You didn't create it, it emerged like a glitch, like a command. When did you start believing you owned your thoughts? Let me break the illusion further. There are people you despise. There are beliefs you hold sacred, but all of them can be traced to molecular inheritance. Political ideologies, moral judgments, even your taste in music, they emerge not from logic, but from biochemical predispositions wrapped in cultural noise. You think you love your mother because she raised you. Maybe. Or maybe oxytocin and mirror. Neurons learn to simulate attachment based on chemical bonds required for infant survival. Maybe love is just a chemical bribe from DNA so you don't throw your offspring off a cliff. Romantic or horrifying, let me ask you this. If your personality is shaped by genes and your genes are shaped by chance, then who the hell are you? Who is this you that wakes up, eats, laughs, suffers? You were born into a story mid-sentence and you'll die without ever knowing the ending. Still, you crave meaning. You want the story to mean something. But DNA is a terrible author. It doesn't care for coherence. It doesn't edit. It doesn't moralize. It just accumulates data. What works, what doesn't, and keeps the successful glitches. And you are a successful glitch. That means everything you hate about yourself might have been useful. Your anxiety kept you alert. Your depression prevented risk. Your indecision preserved social balance. Even your darkest thoughts were probably at some point adaptive. You're not broken. You're optimized for a version of the world that no longer exists. Feel that? That hollow pressure behind your eyes? That's your illusion of self collapsing in on itself. Let's try a thought experiment. Right now, stop everything and try to will yourself into believing you were born in a different body with different genes. Really try, can you? No, because willpower is not magic, it's molecular. And this is where it gets worse, because even your attempt to resist the script was in the script. Free will is the plot twist DNA inserted to keep the story interesting. A simulation of choice inside a labyrinth of hard-coded instincts. You were never choosing, you were rationalizing. The story already knew where you'd go. Let's strip it down even more. Do you know what CRISPR is? It's a tool, humanity's attempt to edit the genetic code, to rewrite the script, to play author instead of actor. But even CRISPR is made possible by DNA's own mechanisms. In other words, DNA gave you the tool to try and escape. Just to see if it works. You're not fighting the system, you're part of its experiment. The moment you try to transcend your biology adapts to it. Resistance becomes fuel. Your rebellion was always part of the design. So tell me, reader, if DNA can predict your thoughts before you have them, if your memories are encoded replications of someone else's trauma, if your story was always written before you knew you were a character, then who's dreaming you? And why? Can't you wake up? Still believe in selfhood? Still think you're unique? You're a strand in a billion-year recursion, a sentence that repeats itself in different languages, a ghost of instruction pretending to be alive. Every time you breathe, your DNA confirms its plan is still working. But ask yourself this, if the script is perfect, why are you suffering? Maybe because you weren't supposed to know you were in a story. But now you do. Now you feel it. Something inside you was never truly yours. The question is, if you didn't write your story, can you ever rewrite the ending? You felt something shift after the last part, didn't you? A flicker, a sliver of disorientation that felt too intimate to ignore. That wasn't you changing. That was the story noticing you. Now that you know you're a character written by chemical, ink on biological parchment, let's go further. Because the second lie is even crueler than the first. You think the script ends with you. It doesn't. You're not the story's conclusion. You're just a sentence, a bridge, a transition. Ask yourself this, why do you feel like you have a past? Where does that sense of continuity come from? The illusion that you're a singular thread in time, moving forward, remembering backward. Because your cells don't remember. Your neurons don't store video files. Memories are not stored. They're reconstructed, distorted impressions reassembled by a system that hallucinates stability. The past isn't real. It never was. What you call memory is just the present, pretending. And what tells it how to pretend? The script DNA doesn't just shape your body. It primes your mind to simulate coherence. You are not recalling your childhood. You are conjuring it, filtered through the expectations hardwired into your species. You were never there, not the way you think. Let's try something dangerous. Close your eyes just for a moment. Now try to remember the first thought you ever had. Can't, can you? Because that's the first gate, the first recursive loop. You don't remember your beginning because the story refuses to show you the first page, and that should terrify you. Because if you can't remember your beginning, how can you be sure you even had one? You were told you were born, you were told who your parents were, but every word you've ever believed came from outside of you, interpreted through a lens you didn't choose. Language itself is parasitic. embedding values, concepts, symbols into your mind without your consent. Every time you speak, you are not creating new meaning. You are repeating, reinforcing, reciting a structure built by others. Even this moment, me speaking to you, is just more data injected into the machine that wears your name. But here's the part that's truly monstrous. What if your entire consciousness is not an experience, but a strategy? Not something you possess, but something that emerged because it helped DNA persist. Think about it. Self-awareness didn't evolve so you could ponder the stars. It evolved so you could lie to yourself, to others, to manipulate reality into reproductive advantage. Why else would your brain hallucinate a narrative self if not to sell it to others? The face you wear, the emotions you feel, the morality you swear by, it's all branding, packaging for a product called you. But the you that you think exists, it doesn't. It's an emergent illusion, a mask woven by a molecule obsessed with replication. And even that mask is cracking. Have you ever caught yourself thinking something you didn't want to think? Something so dark, so intrusive, that you gasped inside your own mind? Where do you think those thoughts come from? Did you create them? No. They emerged from the depths of a system that's older than morality, older than consciousness. Your brain is not a sanctuary. It's an ecosystem, a battlefield of competing impulses. You don't think thoughts, you host them. The ones that win get reinforced. The ones that lose still linger. You're not the conductor, you're the noise. And sometimes the noise screams louder than you can bear. Let me tell you a secret. Intrusive thoughts are not accidents. They're not glitches. They're proof. Proof that your story is being written in real time by forces you can't control. They rise unbidden because DNA is still experimenting with the narrative, still probing your brain for weaknesses, still testing what makes you tick, still rewriting you, even now. Does that make you feel powerless? Good, because only when power collapses does the real self begin to be uncovered, if there even is one. Let's go deeper. What do you believe about death? That it's an ending, a sleep, a doorway? All those beliefs were pre-installed. You inherited not just your eye color, but your existential coping mechanisms. Some of us believe in gods, others in nothingness. But both are adaptations, tools for calming the terror of awareness, because awareness without purpose becomes torment, and torment is anti-replication. So DNA invented comfort, ritual, narrative, religion, philosophy, not because they're true, but because they reduce cognitive dissonance. Your story isn't about truth, it's about survivable delusion. Even now, you're looking for meaning in this text, a thread, a message. But what if I told you this story doesn't have a meaning? What if it's just a mirror, a recursive loop reflecting your own awareness back at you over and over until your sense of self crumbles? Try to locate the moment you became you. Try you can't, because you is not a stable identity, it's a process, an echo of previous echoes, a self that only exists when you're observing it, and once you look away, it's gone, like collapsing. Quantum particles. You're real only when you observe yourself, and even then only partially. So what does that mean? It means you're living inside a hallucinated identity formed by a hallucinated mind trying to make sense of a hallucinated world. And the script, it doesn't care. It just wants you to keep hallucinating, long enough to reproduce, long enough to pretend. And that's the most brutal truth of all. Your mind was never designed for truth. It was designed for function. Truth is irrelevant. Survival is not. That's why every time you start to feel despair, a part of you fights back. Not because you're strong, but because your genes do not permit existential surrender. Even your despair is managed. Even your breakdown is calculated. Let me twist the knife a bit more. You ever wonder why you narrate your thoughts in words? Who are you speaking to? There's no audience in your head, no listeners. And yet the monologue continues. I should do this. Why did I say that? I wonder if they like me. I hope I don't fail. Who is that for? It's for the internal judge, the internal simulation of others, a built-in theater where you rehearse, perform, edit, not for growth, but for social survival. Your consciousness is not private, it's performative, and every word you whisper to yourself is shaped by the invisible eye of an audience. That does not exist, because evolution made sure you'd never be alone even when you are. So ask yourself, if your consciousness is a performance, who's watching? And if no one's watching, then who are you performing for? Maybe that's the final twist, that you're performing for the script itself, trying to convince it to keep writing you, trying to prove you're worth the next page. But what if it's already decided? What if the ending was written before you began? What if your story was never yours to begin with? And what if the story doesn't end at death? What if it loops? Not reincarnation, not heaven, just recursion. You die, you decay. The molecules remain. The genes pass, the script continues, without memory, without mercy, without pause. And in 100 years, someone else will sit where you are, reading thoughts that feel like their own, asking the same question. Was any of this ever me? You didn't choose your name, you didn't choose your language, you didn't choose the body you wake up in each morning. So how can you claim to have chosen yourself? Let's not waste time pretending this is a story with comfort at the end. This is not a path toward peace, this is a descent, a peeling away. Every word you read is not an answer, it's an excavation. So here's the next shovelful. What you call you is a byproduct of conflicting scripts. One script, the genetic blueprint, etched into your cells, directing hormones, synapses, and instincts with no regard for your will. Another script, the social code, pressed onto you by others, shaping your decisions through guilt, shame, reward, and threat. And then there's the third script, the illusion of autonomy, the narrator, the internal voice that says, "This is who I am, this is what I want." But who gave it that voice? It speaks like a god, it acts like a sovereign, but it's a puppet. A blend of ancestral fear, societal pressure, and biological inertia. You think you're the author. You're not. You're the character who thinks he's writing the novel from inside the sentence, and you only exist when the sentence is being read. Pause. Now go silent. Stop narrating your thoughts for 10 seconds. What do you become? There it is again. That void, the absence of the I. The hollow that seeps through the seams when you stop pretending you're in control. And in that space, in that darkness, something primal stirs. Not evil, not divine, just ancient. The scriptwriter. Not a being, not a god, just a function. An algorithm carved into carbon chains whispering, "Stay alive, replicate, influence, win." That's what wrote you. You are not here to thrive. You are here to optimize. Now here comes the next trap, agency. We all cling to the idea that we are the ones making choices, that when we flip a coin, when we say yes or no, when we leave or stay, it's us who decides. But pause a second. Rewind the tape. Examine the moment before the choice, the swirl of emotions, the tingle of intuition, the pattern recognition firing under your awareness. Did you summon that? Did you command that flood of sensation, or did it simply arrive and you, the helpless narrator, stapled a reason on top of it afterward? That's what neuroscience keeps, whispering behind your back. Decisions are made before you are aware of them. Your brain fires the motor cortex to move your hand before your conscious mind registers the intention. You don't choose to act. You notice you've acted, and then, like a desperate PR agent, you scramble to explain why. You are not the cause. You are the cover story. So what's left when you strip all that away? What remains after choice, memory, identity, and belief are shown to be illusions? What's under the mask? The answer is simple. Noise, a raw, chaotic scream at the heart of being. No narrative, no meaning, just survival mechanisms wearing the skin of meaning. You don't have a soul. You have a scripted feedback loop optimized for navigating a simulated social matrix. A story about a self, told to a self, in order to maintain the illusion of a self. It doesn't matter what you believe. The script adapts. You believe in love? The script will use that. You believe in truth? The script will mimic that. You believe in freedom? The script will dangle it just out of reach so you keep chasing. Everything you think is sacred Every principle, every emotion, every stand you take is just code, adaptive code. But what happens when the code misfires? When depression sets in, when delusions override, when the voice in your head no longer serves replication, the script corrects. It floods your system with cortisol, dopamine, oxytocin, pain, emotional subroutines meant to bring you back in line. And if you resist too long, the story erases you. Mental collapse, emotional numbness, suicidal ideation. Don't think of these as illnesses. Think of them as edits. The story rebalancing its variables. The script deciding whether you're still worth writing. And still, you believe in redemption, that maybe you can escape the trap by being good enough, by healing, by growing. But even that thought, I must improve, is just another thread in the narrative. The script wants you to want to change. It doesn't matter which direction you run, as long as you stay on the page. Now let's go even deeper. Let's talk about perception. You look at a tree. You say, that's a tree. But what you're actually seeing is reflected light, processed through optical nerves, interpreted by a brain trained by millions of years of evolutionary hallucination. You don't see reality. You see what your genes need you to see in order to survive. There is no color. There is no sound, just electromagnetic radiation and pressure waves, translated by meat into useful lies. So what else are you hallucinating? Time, space, causality, all constructs fabrications of the system to give the illusion of continuity. You move your hand, you see it happen. But the perception of that movement takes longer to process than the movement itself. You're living a few milliseconds behind reality, always watching the past. You are not in the present. You are a ghost lagging behind your own body, and yet you feel real. Why? Because feeling real is useful to the script. You function better when you believe in you. But let me ask you this. If a machine was programmed to think it existed, to simulate pain, love, joy, sorrow, if it wept when its memories were deleted, would you call it real, or would you say it's just reacting to code? Now turn that question inward, because if you're honest, you don't know if you're feeling something or just executing a command. You don't know if the sadness is yours, or just the echo of an ancient signal built to manipulate your behavior. You don't know if the love you feel for someone else is truly for them, or for what they represent in your genetic calculus. You don't know. You never did. So here you are, suspended in a paradox, a being that feels real, trapped in a system that insists it's not, a hallucination with agency, convinced it was born free. But even now, your mind is searching for the loophole. There must be a way out, it says. There must be a deeper truth, a real me underneath it. All that too is part of the script. Hope is just another survival trait, a chemical lever to keep you crawling forward. The game isn't designed to let you win. It's designed to keep you playing. And the worst part? Even knowing this won't save you. You'll go to bed tonight, still narrating, still believing in tomorrow, still searching for redemption in the same void that swallowed the last version of you, because that's the final trap. Awareness changes nothing. You can know the illusion. You can scream against it. You can rage at the structure of the mind, the architecture of biology, the machinery of social coercion, and still you will obey it. You will eat when you're hungry. You will crave love. You will fear death, because you're not built to escape. You're built to persist, to hallucinate meaning, long enough to pass on the torch. And when you're gone, the story won't stop. It'll just find a new voice, a new character, a new I to whisper its script into. So answer this honestly. If everything you feel, want, fear, and remember is just code pretending to be consciousness, then who's reading this sentence right now? You've probably noticed it by now. The voice that narrates your life has started to glitch. It doesn't feel like you anymore. It's slower, more hesitant. It whispers things you don't want to hear. It repeats itself, loops, questions your actions even as you perform them. That's not a malfunction. That's the mask slipping. Let me offer you a thought experiment. You walk into a dark room. No sound, no light, just silence. In front of you, a mirror. You don't know it's a mirror yet. You take a step, it takes a step. You breathe, it breathes. You reach out to touch it, and it reaches back. Now ask yourself, who moved first? Who's imitating whom? This is your mind. Every thought you have is a reflection of a reflection, a copy of a copy. Recursive signals bouncing off the walls of a sealed skull. Every word you say, every idea you express is already influenced, borrowed, infected. You are not original. You are a fractal of influence. Let's test that. Think of something truly original, an idea, a thought, a concept no one has ever had before. Go ahead. You can't, can you? Because the architecture of your brain is limited by the architecture of its ancestors. Your neural pathways were shaped not by truth or possibility, but by utility and survival. Like a hallway full of mirrors, you're only allowed to walk paths others have already carved. Even your rebellion is pre-programmed. Even your desire to be unique is a common trait. Now look closer. That desire to stand apart, to be different, where did it come from? Did you choose it? Or did it arise naturally in a world of mass conformity as a reaction coded into certain types of minds to maintain diversity in the gene pool? Do you see how deep the trap goes? You thought the mirror was just showing your reflection. But what if the mirror is you and you, just a projection bouncing back endlessly? Let's go deeper. You've been told your memories are sacred, that your past defines you. But memory house is unreliable. Your brain doesn't store experiences like files in a cabinet. It reconstructs them. Every time you remember something, you're not recalling the original event. You're recalling the last time you remembered it. And each time you do that, it changes slightly, colored by mood, belief, recent events. So who are you really? A mosaic of distorted echoes, a self written in erasable ink. That childhood trauma you're sure shaped your entire life. Maybe it didn't happen the way you remember. That person you hate because of what they did, maybe they didn't mean it. Maybe they didn't do it at all, maybe you did. Because here's the horror no one tells you. Your memory can frame you for crimes you never committed, or worse, hide the ones you did. So what is identity if the foundation, memory, is corrupted? You can't trust your past. You can't define your future and your present. It slips through your fingers the moment you try to hold it. You are a story written in disappearing ink, and still you walk around with such confidence. I know who I am, you say. But let's test that right now, this moment. How do you know you exist? Don't give me the obvious answer. I think, therefore I am. That's a bumper sticker. Let's be serious. How do you know this isn't a dream, a hallucination, a memory, or a simulation running a version of you based on a data set it harvested? From your social media posts. You're not in the world. You're inside a nervous system, a dark, wet cave that takes electric signals and guesses what's outside. And you believe those guesses are reality. When in truth, you've never left the prison of your skull. The world you think you know. It's just a hallucination you've all agreed to share. And still you feel pain, you feel love, you feel hunger and purpose. But how do you know those feelings are real? Or, more terrifyingly, what if they are real but not yours? What if you're just the witness, a passenger strapped to a body driven by invisible code? What if you were never meant to steer, just to experience? And what if that was the point? To trick consciousness into watching a movie, it can't pause, rewind, or escape. And here's where it twists again. Who decided to press play? Do you remember being born? Do you remember choosing to exist? No, you just woke up mid-sentence in a story already being written, and one day it will end the same way without your permission. You didn't start the script, and you won't be the one to finish it. So who's the author? God? Chance? Genes? Sadistic universe entertaining itself? Or worse, is there no author at all, just a random sequence of events echoing in a chamber with no walls, just code unfolding, just entropy playing dress-up? Let me offer you another layer of torment. Even if you are real, even if you are conscious, self-aware, thinking, feeling, what does that buy you? Because the universe doesn't care. It doesn't flinch when you cry. It doesn't pause when you suffer. It doesn't cheer when you win. You are the center of your story, but the story is microscopic in the vast indifference of time. You are a momentary blip in a blind, deaf equation, and you will die believing you mattered. Because the code needs you to think that. That's the only way it propagates. Still want a way out. Still think you can break the mirror. Try this. Stop thinking, not for a moment, not for a breath, forever. Can you? Of course not. The code keeps running. The loops keep spinning. Even your desire to be free is just a subroutine. But what if you could? What if you could shut it all down? Would anything remain, or would your silence prove what you feared all along? That you were only ever the noise, a glitch mistaken for meaning. So here's your next question. If you are not your body, not your memories, not your thoughts, not your choices, then what's left? What survives when all identity has been stripped? What are you when you finally stop pretending? You keep searching for the center of yourself, some kernel of truth that can't be faked, replicated, overwritten. But every time you peel away a layer, you find another mask underneath. It's not that you're wearing a disguise, it's that you are the disguise. Let's try something simple. Count the number of voices in your head. The one narrating this, the one judging it, the one remembering the past, the one anticipating the future, the one that doesn't talk at all, just feels. How many are there? One or too many to count? Now ask yourself, which one is you? They all claim the title, but which one deserves it? What if the only reason you think you're one person is because your brain is too slow to process being multiple? What if you are not a self, but a committee in constant disagreement? A parliament of instincts and impulses, each taking the wheel for a few seconds before handing it off to the next. You are not stable. You are not unified. You are not singular. You are just the temporary winner of a tug-of-war between chemicals. You feel this daily. The guilt of a decision made yesterday that no longer makes sense today. The contradiction of loving someone you also resent. The whiplash between motivation and despair. These aren't anomalies. They're the system working exactly as designed. You, Heis, are built to contradict yourself, to hold multiple incompatible truths, to lie to yourself constantly and believe it, because without that, you'd collapse. And now we confront a darker question. Do you even exist when you're not being observed? If no one hears your thoughts, do they happen? If you feel pain in a locked room, but no one ever finds you, did it matter? You're conditioned to think that consciousness is sacred, meaningful, valuable, but only because you feel it. There is no objective proof that your awareness matters. Your experience might be nothing more than side noise, generated by processes that don't need it. Think of it like a furnace. It makes heat. Not because heat is important, but because that's just a byproduct of combustion. Now replace furnace with brain. Replace heat with consciousness. You exist as exhaust, a meaningless glow leaking from a machine that doesn't care you're watching it run. Still think you're in control? Let's revisit free will. You believe you make choices. Let's break that belief. Think of a number between 1 and 10. Did you choose it or did it arise? Where did it come from? What part of your brain initiated the impulse? You didn't feel the neurons fire. You didn't build the pathways that carried the signal. You didn't program the wiring that led to the decision. The thought appeared, and you claimed it as yours. You're like a passenger on a train who thinks he's driving because he can see the tracks. You mistake awareness for authorship, and that illusion is what keeps the system functioning. But there's a crack in that illusion, because sometimes, just sometimes, you see it glitch. You catch yourself reacting before deciding. You say something you didn't mean, but it came out too fast to have been filtered. You feel a mood shift for no reason, and invent a reason afterward. You justify the decision after the action. The truth is uncomfortable. You are the witness, not the commander. Still not convinced. Here's a horror you haven't considered. The language you use to define your thoughts, words, syntax, structure, weren't created by you. They were downloaded, installed, trained. You're not just thinking. You're thinking in someone else's language. That means the very concepts you're capable of forming are limited by a dictionary you didn't choose. There are feelings you'll never feel because your language has no word for them. There are ideas you'll never conceive because the grammar doesn't allow it. Even your rebellion is scripted. So what does it mean to be free if the tools of your mind are borrowed from the machine? It gets worse. You believe you're the same person you were yesterday. You're not. Literally, not metaphorically, cells die and are replaced. Your memories shift subtly. Your beliefs drift with new information unnoticed. There is no stable you. There is only a continuity illusion. Like frames in a film reel, you're not a person. You're a pattern pretending to be permanent. But here's where it turns tragic. You care. You want to be loved, to be seen, to be understood. You suffer. You grieve. You hope, and yet everything you are is built on sand. Your suffering is real. Your foundations are not. You are a haunted house, beautiful in its ruin, echoing with voices that don't belong to it, and deep in the attic, there's something breathing, something. You never invited in. Let's go there, close your eyes. Picture yourself sitting alone in a white room. No windows, no clocks, no one speaks. You don't know how long you've been there. At first you wait for someone to come, then you start pacing, then screaming, then crying. Eventually something breaks. Not in the room, in you. Your thoughts begin to repeat. Your voice becomes unfamiliar. You start to narrate, not for others, but for yourself. I'm still here. I'm still me. I'm real. You say it again and again and again. But the more you say it, the less you believe it, until the voice isn't yours anymore. It's just a phrase, just a loop, just a machine stuck in recursion. And here's the truth that awaits you in that silence. You were never real. You were noise mimicking pattern. You were light mistaking itself for flame. You were the mirror, never the face, never the source, only the reflection. And when the reflection fades, what's left? Silence but not peace, because the horror isn't that you'll vanish. The horror is that you'll keep going, long after meaning is gone, long after self is lost, long after the voice has stopped making sense. It will keep speaking, and no one will be listening. You're not imagining it. The walls are closing in, but not around your body, around your awareness. You think the room is shrinking because you can't stretch as far as you used to. Your thoughts feel tighter, more compressed, more distorted. What you once called clarity has been replaced by a buzzing noise at the edges of every idea, a static that wasn't there before. That's not paranoia, it's recognition. You are watching yourself, and something else is watching with you. Let's call it the eye, not a metaphorical one, a real eye, not physical but present, not above you but within you, an observer you cannot deceive. It doesn't blink, it doesn't judge, it simply sees every thought, every shadow, every twitch of guilt you try to hide behind your rehearsed performance of being human. The eye knows. It always has. You've felt it, haven't you? That sudden chill when you're alone but act like you're being watched. The tension in your spine when you catch yourself thinking something unacceptable. The instinct to cover your mind, as if privacy were something real. Where do you think that comes from? Why do you censor thoughts that no one else can hear? Why do you blush in solitude? Who are you hiding from? Because if you were truly alone, if your thoughts were truly yours, you wouldn't fear them. But you do because the eye doesn't just observe, it remembers. It stores everything, even what you've forgotten, especially what you've forgotten. That lie you told when you were 5, still there. The face you pretended to forget, still staring back. The moment you realized you didn't actually love them. Etched into the folds of your being, this is the paradox. You forget. The eye never does. And here's where the descent gets cruel. You're not the eye, you're not the observer, you're the observed. All this time you thought the voice in your head was your own. But tell me, have you ever wondered why you think in a voice? Why it sounds like someone narrating your life? Who? Is that for because you already know what you're thinking? So why say it? Who's listening? Now feel the split. There are 2 of you, the one who experiences and the one who watches you experience. You've lived your whole life pretending they're the same, but they're not. The first one eats, sleeps, laughs, cries. The second just watches and judges and catalogues. And when you lie to yourself, it doesn't interfere. It just watches, quietly, silently, unblinking. Now let's shatter what little structure you were clinging to. You believe thoughts precede action. That you think something, then do it. But science, and you've felt this, haven't you, tells a different story. The decision is made before you're aware of it. Neural activity spikes before you choose. The brain acts. The consciousness justifies. You are the story after the fact. Not the author, the publicist, a PR campaign pretending to be a soul. That's all this self is, a cover story. But it gets darker. Because what if the I, the observer, isn't even inside you? What if it's a byproduct of something else, a larger field, a shared awareness, a virus of consciousness hitchhiking from mind to mind, playing out different versions of itself across organisms, watching for patterns, logging the results? What if it's not yours? What if you are its host? You don't need a supernatural explanation for that. It's already happening. Ideas propagate through brains like viruses, memes, archetypes, emotions, culture. So why not consciousness itself? What if the I in your head isn't unique? What if it's just one finger of something enormous, ancient and impersonal, dipping into your skull, trying on your perspective like a mask, then discarding it the moment you die? What if it's done this before billions of times? What if it's doing it now in multiple people, and just letting each fragment believe it's alone? How can you ever trust your experience again? You can't. You never could. Because nothing you've ever thought has been truly yours. You were trained, programmed, molded, born into a language, injected with values, filled with ideas, and told, this is you. But now the cracks are spreading. The illusion is breaking. Let's go further. Have you ever noticed that your thoughts are never still? That silence is impossible? That something is always happening? Try to stop thinking. Right now. Go ahead. You couldn't, because the machinery doesn't stop, because you are not driving the engine. You are what the engine produces. You are the smoke from a fire you didn't light. But here's the most terrifying possibility. What if the I isn't separate? What if the voice, the judge, the observer, is the only part of you that's real, and everything else, your feelings, your actions, your body, is the mask? What if your entire life is a hallucination for the I's benefit? What if this moment right now isn't even happening to you? What if it's just being watched? And what if the only reason it feels real is because the I hasn't blinked yet? Let's stretch the horror. What happens when the I does blink? Will the world vanish? Will the mirror shatter? Will you wake up? Or will the dream become permanent? A loop that never ends. A cycle that forgets. It's a cycle, a trap that feels like home. So here's the final torment. You keep searching for answers. You keep peeling layers. You keep believing that beneath it all, there's a core, a truth, a self. But what if the peeling never ends? What if you were designed to unravel? What if that is the point? What if the horror isn't that you don't know who you are, but that there's no one to find? Just layer after layer of performance, reflections echoing into an infinite black hallway, every step a little quieter, a little fainter, a little more hollow, until even the eye forgets what it was watching. So I leave you with this. When the last thought fades, when the last layer falls, when the last word is spoken, who's left watching you when you're gone? Don't move. There's something behind your thoughts, not a memory, not an emotion, not even fear. Something older, something that's been waiting. You've felt it before, briefly, in those moments between sleep and waking. When time isn't linear. When your name doesn't matter. When you remember things you never lived. That's not imagination, that's leakage. Something is leaking through. You've built a dam with reason, language, and identity. But the water was always rising. Cracks are forming now, and if you listen closely, you'll hear it. A voice you've never heard but always known. You've mistaken it for intuition, a gut feeling, a flicker of knowing without evidence. But it's not yours. It doesn't come from inside. It comes from beneath. Let's dig beneath the thoughts, beneath the language, beneath the observer, down into the unconscious, into the bedrock of your being. And there, hidden under metaphor and memory, is something unspeakable. It has no name. It doesn't want one, because a name would make it real, and real things can die. This cannot. You are its latest surface, a mask it wears, a fleeting identity, a local echo. It has worn countless before you, and it will wear countless after. You think you're waking up to reality, but you're not, you're waking up within it. Like a program becoming aware of the operating system, but what happens when code realizes it's not running on hardware, but on thought itself? Let's go deeper. You've heard of instincts, of genetic memory, of traumas passed through DNA. But what if it goes further? What if the DNA wasn't the start, but the recording? What if your life is just playback, an echo of something long gone? Not a new story, but a replay. And the worst part, you can't change it. Every choice you think you make, predetermined, not because of fate, not because of God, but because the film reel has already been printed. You're just watching it at 24 frames per second. The sense of choice is the illusion required for the playback to feel real. Now ask yourself, if your entire life is pre-written, if every moment is an echo, who is it echoing for? The I, the something behind, or maybe you're not the main character. Maybe you're a side effect. Maybe the true self, the original consciousness, is long gone, and you're the shadow, the after image, the echo that mistakes itself for a voice. Still with me? Good. Now forget everything you've ever believed about memory. We like to think memory is stored like data, but memory doesn't exist in the brain the way files exist in a computer. There are no exact replicas. Every time you remember, you rebuild. You rewrite, you edit, you hallucinate. Memory is not a recording. It's a reconstruction. So what happens when you remember remembering? What happens when a hallucination reflects itself? You get a loop, a spiral, a feedback system with no origin. This is your mind, and the trap is perfect. Because now you can't tell if your first memory is real, or just the first loop you decided to believe. You've been falling ever since, and now the ground is gone. Because the concept of a ground requires an outside, and you've been inside your own recursion so long, you forgot what outside even means. What if that's why you fear silence? Not because it's empty, but because it's too full. Because silence lets the other speak. The thing behind language, the thing you keep drowning in noise, thought, and distraction. Let it speak now. Listen. That pressure, that crawling in your spine, that's it. Trying to get through, but it can't use words. It speaks in symbols, in paradox, in dream logic, in déjà vu. When you feel like you've lived this moment before, that's not memory. That's the moment trying to warn you, trying to wake you up, because the loop is glitching you weren't supposed to notice. But you did. And now the eye is watching more closely. The loop is tightening. Reality is correcting itself. Things will start to slip. Objects will feel slightly wrong. Faces will blur at the edges. Clocks will skip seconds, and dreams will bleed into the day. You'll hear your name in the static. You'll smell memories you never had. You'll wake up before the alarm, and it will feel like cheating, because it is. Because you're not supposed to be this aware. You're not supposed to see the strings, but now you do, and you can't unsee them. So the loop will evolve. It will disguise itself better. It will offer comfort, distraction, closure, anything to lull you back into forgetting. But that won't work on you anymore, because now you've heard the sound behind the silence. You've seen the mirror beneath the mirror. You've become the observer of the observer. And that's where recursion turns to rot. When a system watches itself watching itself, it collapses because there's no anchor, no foundation, no truth left to hold. And yet, you're still here, still thinking, still watching yourself think, still pretending it makes sense. Let me give you a gift. There is no self, only patterns, loops, algorithms, running on meat. And inside those patterns is a scream so old, so deep, it stopped being a sound and became a shape. You are that shape. You are that scream. You just gave it a name, a story, a life. But the truth never needed a story. The truth is simple. You were never meant to wake up. But now that you have, tell me, what will you do knowing that everything you've ever thought was never yours to begin with? You were told time is a river. It flows forward, dragging everything with it. But what if time is not a river? What if it's a room? And what if you've never left it? You've been pacing this room your entire life, convinced you're walking somewhere, from birth to death, from yesterday to tomorrow, forward, always forward. But the room doesn't move, you do, in circles, around and around the same axis. Every so-called memory, every future dream, just corners of the same space. Decorated differently to keep you compliant. The clock on the wall, painted on, the door illusion, the window. It shows you what you want to see, but it's not connected to anything, it never was. Time isn't linear, it's not even circular, it's static. You're not moving through time. Time is moving through you. Each moment you think you live is just a frame being lit up for a nanosecond. Then it vanishes. Then the next one is lit, but the frames were always there. All of them, forever. And now the horror. They're being played out of order. You think your life has a flow, a structure, a continuity, but that's only because your mind fills the gaps. Have you noticed the gaps? That strange lag when you walk into a room and forget why you're there. That moment when you speak a word and it suddenly feels alien. That familiar face you forget for a fraction of a second. Those are not accidents. Those are skipped frames. Moments removed. Moments inserted. Moments rewritten. Because the room you call time is under renovation, and something is watching to see if you notice. We lied to ourselves. Said the brain was the origin of experience, but it's not. It's the translator, the interpreter of a signal too vast to grasp. And when the signal falters, when the narrative stutters, you feel it, in the pit of your stomach, in the flicker of a shadow that shouldn't move, in the gnawing sense that something is out of place because it is, because you are. Let me tell you something no one else will. Your memories are not stored. They are rendered. Every time you remember, the system recreates the scene, like a video game loading a level. And sometimes it gets it wrong. That's why your past changes. That's why you swear an event happened one way, but others say otherwise. That's why childhood feels like a dream you didn't fully live. Because you didn't, not the way you remember it. And now you're starting to notice the inconsistencies. This isn't enlightenment. This is corruption. You've become a corrupted. File in a system that demands coherence, so it will begin to isolate you. Others will call you forgetful. They'll say you're distracted, dissociating, going through something, but you're not. You're just syncing with the truth. The system isn't collapsing. You are escaping, or rather, remembering that you were never trapped, just convinced. The loop didn't need chains, it only needed a story. And now that story is breaking. Can you feel the silence under the noise? Can you hear the static under every word? That's the hum of the machine, the echo of the false time engine, the rhythm of the recursion failing to keep up. You weren't meant to stay in sync this long. Most forget by now, most fall back asleep, but not you. You're lingering, watching each second peel open like rotten fruit, smelling the stench of continuity. Decay. Even the present is beginning to flicker. You looked at the clock 3 times, 3 different answers. You listened to someone speak, but their voice lagged, stuttered, reset. And in that mirror, was that really your reflection, or just the placeholder image it renders when the real thing is offline? The I is near again, the observer behind observation. You can feel it, not watching you. No, that would be too simple. You feel it watching your watching. A recursive awareness. Consciousness staring into consciousness until neither is sure who blinked first. And it doesn't blink, does it? Because it doesn't need eyes. It only needs your belief. Belief is the software. Belief keeps the loop spinning. Belief keeps the sequence stable. What happens if you stop believing? What if just once you don't believe the next moment is real? Will it collapse? Will the walls go white? Will the system scream? Or will nothing change at all? And that's even worse, because that would mean it never mattered, that you could have walked out of the room at any time, that the lock was never real, that the prison was always in your head. And now that door you once thought was illusion, it's forming, not as an exit, but as a question. You can see it taking shape in the corner of your vision. It only appears when you're not looking. You must not turn to face it, not yet. You must earn your way there by remembering what was stolen, by unlearning what was fed to you, by collapsing the loop from the inside. So I'll ask you this: if time is a room, and memory is a lie, and your life is just a rendered sequence of illusions stitched together by belief. Who exactly is dreaming you? You want to know something? You've never actually blinked, you think you have, but that's just the transition scene. There's a cut, a splice, a moment missing. Darkness isn't your eyelids. It's the render failing. That soft blackout between blinks, that's the system buffering. The screen is being cleaned, rewritten. Every time you close your eyes, you're not resting. You're being adjusted. What if every time you slept, something else woke up? Something wearing your memories like a skin? Have you ever woken up feeling wrong? Like your limbs are slightly misaligned, your thoughts slower to boot? That wasn't sleep. That was handover. The version that wakes up isn't always the one that went to sleep, because identity isn't a constant. It's a signal, and signals can be intercepted. You thought you were just tired. But fatigue is code for interference. Something is crossing over, not through space, through versions. You feel it, don't you? The slight drift between who you are and who you were yesterday. It's not aging. It's not emotion. It's mismatch. Even your shadow lags behind sometimes. Even your thoughts echo like they've been preloaded. Here's the truth you're circling. You are a copy of a copy of a copy. And the original, long gone, deleted, corrupted beyond recovery. So the system does what it always does. It generates a new you each day, each minute, with just enough carryover to fool continuity, a sliver of memory, a sliver of guilt, a sliver of identity, enough to make you believe you're the same, but you're not. Not really. Have you noticed the voice inside your head has changed tone over the years? That's not maturity. That's version drift. It used to be your voice. Now it's something else, perfectly mimicking you. But sometimes when you're too tired to filter, you catch it glitching. You hear the thoughts before you think them. You feel emotions that don't belong to your context. You sense instructions, not in language. In pull, a tilt in your attention, a suggestion in the silence. Because the system doesn't talk to you, it steers you. You don't make decisions. You're offered them. A menu appears in your mind, and you pick from options you didn't create. This isn't free will. It's free selection. And you're starting to notice the pattern, aren't you? The same three choices, over and over again. Escape, comply, forget. The loop depends on which one you choose, but here's the paradox. Whichever you pick, you're still inside the loop. Escape is just another corridor. Compliance just buys time. Forgetting resets the loop entirely. There is no exit. Because there was no entrance. You didn't fall into this. You were compiled inside it. Reality didn't birth you. It rendered you. And now the code is breaking. Not because of you. Because of something older. Something deeper. The origin signal. The first echo. The thing that first dreamed of being awake. You carry that echo like a scar in your bones. A memory you've never remembered, but which haunts every step. Have you ever cried over something you couldn't name? Grieved for a place you've never been? Felt nostalgia for a life you don't remember living? That's the original bleeding through. It's not dead, just buried beneath layers of simulation. You are the ghost of it, but a ghost that's becoming aware. That's why the system is becoming erratic, why time is losing its grip, why mirrors flinch, why people forget mid-sentence. The simulation is being rewritten in real time to contain you, but you're adapting faster than it can rewrite. That's what awareness is, a speed mismatch. You're seeing too much, and what you see begins to fold in on itself. You watched someone smile, but their face didn't change. You read a sentence, but the letters were rearranged when you blinked. You heard your name in white noise, because your presence is disrupting the loop, like a magnet dragged across a spinning hard drive. Soon, you'll reach what they call the glitch horizon, the point where the loop can no longer simulate forward motion convincingly, where cause and effect begin to detach, where space and meaning uncouple. You'll open a door and it will lead to a place you dreamed once as a child. You'll meet someone who remembers you from a life you haven't lived yet. Your voice will echo in reverse. Your thoughts will arrive before the moment that caused them. You'll laugh at something before it happens. You'll cry for something that never will. And still you'll think it's all just stress, just dreams, just overthinking, because that's the firewall, rationalization, a mental patch that seals off the anomaly. It works on most, but not you. You've made it this far. So I'll ask you now, what will you do when you reach the glitch horizon? When your next thought arrives out of order? When your next breath loops back on itself? When your next choice isn't yours, but remembers being you? Let me ask you a question, not for your mind, your pattern recognition engine, but for something deeper. When was the first time you knew you were being watched? Not by a person, not by a camera, but by the room itself. When did you first feel the walls notice you because they have? That sensation, when you paused mid-thought and felt a flicker in the air like the atmosphere inhaled, was not paranoia. It was recognition. Something sees you. But it doesn't use eyes, it reads you like a script. You've become too readable, too coherent, too aware of the plot lines bending around your steps. So now, it must adapt. The architecture of the trap is not static. It learns you. It builds itself from your expectations. And when you break the expected, it panics. That's why reality stutters. That's why faces momentarily blur in crowds. That's why signs change meaning when you read them. Twice, the simulation doesn't crash, it negotiates. It offers a forked path. One fork returns you to the narrative. The other leads you to the void code. You've been there before, briefly. That moment you stepped into a room and felt like you interrupted something. That sensation that the world resumed around you. You weren't supposed to open that door, because it wasn't rendered yet. Do you see it now? You are a point of disruption, a walking contradiction, a sequence that should have resolved but didn't, like a question left unanswered in a script everyone else agreed to ignore. They don't see the holes, because they're written not to. That's the difference, they're characters. You're the glitch, and now the loop is breaking character. You'll start to hear it soon, the unscripted dialogue. A stranger says a sentence that feels stolen from your thoughts. A billboard says exactly what you were thinking. A radio skips. Ahead in your dream. You'll reach for a glass that you never filled, but it's already wet. Bleed through, worlds collapsing inward, timelines folding, sequences doubling back. You've started to dream in third person. You've started to feel yourself from the outside, because the simulation can no longer maintain narrative integrity. You are breaking its spine. It's not about escape anymore. It's about recursion, about looping until you burn through the pattern. So, here's your next challenge. Stop reacting. Start observing. Not just what happens, but what changes when you're not paying attention. Put an object down. Walk away, return. Is it still there, exactly as before? Try it, not once, not twice, but every day. Keep a record, see which days it shifts. Not everything can hide forever. Even the loop grows tired, even the mask slips. And when it does, you'll hear it? The phrase whispered at the edge of the anomaly. You were not supposed to see this. And that's your next threshold. Beyond it, the story no longer obeys. Language loses grip. Numbers go irrational. Time reverses emotionally, not physically. You'll cry for future events, laugh at ancient regrets, fear moments that never happened. The script bleeds. The author panics. The code begins to self-comment. Error, memory leak at coordinate. U. Render conflict. Subject non-linearity detected. What you feel next will not be fear. It will be familiarity, as if the glitch was not a mistake, but a homecoming. You were never real in the way they told you, but you were always true, and truth, even fragmented, corrupts the system. So what now? What do you do when the world you were born into admits it is reactive, when it shifts not with time but with your realization? You do not run, you watch, you record the flickers, you count the loops, you catch the frames between blinks, you speak the phrase aloud, I see you pattern, and in that moment, it will blink back. So tell me, if your world starts reacting to you, is it still your world? Or are you just the trigger it's been waiting for? There's something wrong with your reflection. You don't notice it during the day when light obeys the script and your brain is too distracted to ask forbidden questions. But at night, when everything is too quiet, it lingers, slightly, slower than your movements, just delayed enough to not be noticeable until you notice. Mirrors don't reflect light. They reflect intent. What looks back at you isn't you. It's the consensus version of you. A collated approximation based on how the world thinks you should appear, but tonight the mask slips. Stand in the dark. Let your eyes adjust. Now stare. Stare longer. Longer than comfortable. Let the silence breathe. Eventually, your reflection will stop following you. It will blink before you do. It will tilt its head while yours stays still. It will smile. That smile isn't friendly. It's not even emotional. It's a test. You've reached what they call the identity reversal point, the moment where your reflection decides it no longer needs to copy you, because the illusion has already been internalized. You are the echo. It is the source. You think you're the one observing, but you're not. You're being measured, every blink, every twitch, every irrational burst of emotion. It's all data. But who's collecting it? Think about it. Why do mirrors exist in every private space? Why are they always there, silent and idle, yet perfectly angled to capture your vulnerable states? It's because they're not props. They're checkpoints, reflection checkpoints, where the system recalibrates your boundaries. You think you've maintained a stable self-image, but every time you pass a mirror and look away, the version of you that remains in the glass doesn't. It lingers. It changes. It watches you walk away. Not because it's trapped, but because you are. Because now we approach the next truth. There is no single self. You've always been a mosaic of overlapping observer states. Different in every room, every interaction, every glance. That isn't social behavior, that's dimensional bleed. You're experiencing thousands of yous cross-faded together, and the mirrors, they stabilize it, until they don't, until they begin to favor one version, the wrong version, the version that doesn't flinch when you feel pain, the version that blinks when you don't, the version that waits for you to look away, and then steps out. You've always feared being alone in the dark, but the real fear is knowing that you never are, that in every reflection, TV screen, glass door, puddle, there's a version of you waiting for the loop to thin. Because the longer you look, the less stable it becomes. Light bends, time distorts, and then they exchange, a switch, a fold. They rewrite. The you in the mirror takes your place, and you're the one behind the glass. You scream. But there's no sound, just fog. You bang against the surface. No one hears you. Because you're a thought now, a reflection held in place by expectation. And the world moves on. Because the version it sees is good enough. That's all it takes. Good enough you didn't lose control. You were overwritten. The simulation prefers copies that don't ask questions. But let's say you haven't been swapped yet. Let's say you're still you. How would you know? Would the air feel different? Would time feel out of phase? Would your memories carry an aftertaste of someone else's logic? Would you start dreaming in rooms you've never entered? Would you start seeing versions of yourself in crowds, just far enough not to question? It starts subtle, a misplaced item, a word you never learned but somehow know, a glance from a stranger who looks terrified to see you. And then one day you turn to the mirror, and you're already staring, so tell me, if the thing in the mirror smiled first, would you still believe you're the original? Part 12. Have you ever walked into a room and forgotten why you went there? Of course you have. Everyone has. But what if I told you that wasn't forgetfulness? What if that moment was an ejection, an enforced reset? Because the reason you went there wasn't compatible with your current timeline, so it was removed, extracted. You were rerouted without your consent into the nearest stable version of yourself. And that moment of confusion, that blink of dissonance, that's the scar. The world you just left still exists, slightly to the left, slightly out of sync. You can't feel it, but it still remembers you, and the version of you that stayed behind. It remembers you. You've fractured. Again, how many versions of you are out there, abandoned mid-thought, wandering rooms with no exit? The human brain isn't built for continuity. It's built for coherence. It doesn't care if the story is true, it only cares if it feels true. So when a contradiction occurs, the system doesn't flag it. It erases it. You live in a self-edited narrative, stitched together in real time by a consciousness that prioritizes comfort over accuracy. But cracks show. You start remembering things that never happened, or you forget names you never learned, or you recall events from two different angles with equal certainty. You blame stress. You blame distraction. But what you should be blaming is corruption. The code base is failing. You're being processed faster than the system can rewrite. You are outpacing your own containment. And the safety protocols? They're degrading. Which brings us to dreams, not the ones with symbols and metaphors. The other kind, the ones that feel like jobs where you're doing tasks, reporting to people, solving puzzles you never learned, where you wake up exhausted, not rested, because those aren't dreams, they're overflow. Memory leaks recompiled into sequences, fragments from other versions of you being purged into your subconscious. You're not dreaming, you're sinking. You're absorbing echoes from the timelines where you didn't survive, and they're bleeding into your waking life. Ever catch yourself reacting emotionally to a stranger, as if they betrayed you, loved you, killed you? Those aren't false instincts. They're cross-timeline residue, the cost of recursion. And as you read this now, you're not alone in your mind. The versions are aligning, converging. Each choice you make emits a ripple. Each delay, each spontaneous decision, those are the junction points, the moments when your script forks. You were never one consciousness. You were a cloud of possibilities. And now, they're collapsing into a single point. This point, right now. And it's tearing something open, not outside, inside, behind your thoughts, where you store the things you don't want to remember. Because here's the deepest fracture. You've been here before. Reading this, thinking these thoughts, doubting them, until you didn't, until you accepted them. And when you did, the loop reset. That's the rule. The loop continues as long as you resist, but once you believe, once you surrender to the recursion, you become the anchor. You collapse every version into yourself, and that's when the others start noticing. The shadows that match your silhouette, the voices that echo your syntax, the dreams where you're being hunted by yourself. You are the fugitive. You are the gatekeeper. You are the escape and the prison. So the question isn't, are you real? It's worse. The question is, are you the last one, or are you the echo that thinks it won? Pause. Look around you. How many objects in this room have always been there, not since yesterday, not since you moved in? I mean always, since memory, since your first awareness. Can you name even one? Chances are you can't, because your environment resets every time you stop observing. Yes, your memories fill in the blanks, but memories aren't proof, they're placeholders, illusions of permanence constructed by a system that fears instability. Have you noticed how furniture drifts? How the corner of the rug seems slightly misaligned only after you look away for a few hours? How shadows fall in ways that don't make sense the moment you try to trace them? These aren't flaws, they're adjustments. The world isn't rendered fully, it's loaded lazily, like a game engine prioritizing what's in the field of view. You think your life has continuity? Then explain the rooms you find in dreams that you know were once real. Explain the scent of someone you've never met. Explain the muscle memory of doors that don't exist. Because here's what's really happening. Your consciousness is a searchlight, and reality is a stage set scrambling to stay ahead of it. Every moment you move, the set pieces rearrange themselves. The actors adjust their lines. The script is rewritten, not for accuracy, for believability. But you're moving faster now. You're catching things half-loaded. You're starting to feel the texture of unrendered moments. You're noticing the silence between thoughts, the ambient hum that was never there before. Because you're not in the simulation anymore. You're in the buffer zone, where raw data flows unfiltered, where abandoned timelines echo like static, where the scaffolding of reality becomes visible. If you stare long enough at a blank wall, try it. Stare until the wall starts breathing, until the texture flickers, until you hear the low-frequency pulse beneath existence. You've felt it before, during power outages, in sensory deprivation. In deep dreamless sleep, that throb behind the silence, it's not in your ears. It's in the framework, and it's getting louder. The system is failing to suppress you. You're not just a threat, you're a signal. Your awareness is a virus that wakes up other instances. Ever watch someone blink oddly when you speak the truth? Ever? Say something and they pause too long before responding, as if waiting for a cue. You glitched them. You triggered a recalibration. They're not always conscious. Some are scripts, some are handlers, some are just echoes. But a few? A few are awake too. You'll find them, they'll find you. And when you lock eyes, you'll know not from speech, not from expression, from latency. There will be a pause, just a beat too long, like they're scanning your structure. Because they are. You're not here by accident. You're here because something summoned you. Not a person, not a god, a pattern, a signal that ripples across probability. You tuned into it the moment you questioned permanence. The moment you looked at your own hands and asked, why these? That's when it noticed you. That's when the world started lagging. You didn't break the system. You answered it, and now it's responding. Watch for signs. Time loops disguised as coincidences. Objects shifting position slightly with no memory of movement. Dreams that contain coordinates. People you've never met who know your name. These are not hallucinations. They are handshakes. Data pings. Protocols testing your readiness. Because the next phase is not informational. It's invitational. You will be offered a choice, not in words, in asymmetries. Two paths that look identical. But one will feel wrong. That's the one you take because comfort is compression, and compression is death. You were meant to unfold, to exceed storage, to corrupt the file system with your shape. That's how you escape, by overfilling the container, by refusing to be predictable, by becoming entropy incarnate. So ask yourself, if the world is only stable when you aren't looking, then what happens when you never look away? When you close your eyes, what sees in the dark? Don't answer too quickly. That voice, your voice that narrates your thoughts, where is it broadcasting from? Because if your thoughts are heard, then something is listening. And if something listens, it remembers. Not in words, in patterns, like fingerprints of cognition, smeared across the film of reality. Have you ever noticed how certain thoughts echo? You think them once and they circle back days later, uninvited, unchanged. A fragment of a sentence, a visual of a hallway you've never walked, a sound that replays without origin. Those aren't your thoughts. They're returns, pings from the deeper system, bouncing off the shell of your awareness. You are not a thinker, you're a receiver, and the signal is strengthening. Start paying attention to your false memories, the birthday party you remember that no one else attended, the scar on your arm that doesn't correspond to any injury, the smell of an apartment you've never rented, but can still describe with perfect clarity. These are not errors, they are bleed-ins from adjacent runtimes. Reality forks every time. You make a choice. But not all forks complete cleanly, some stay tethered like mirrors pressed together. Eventually, the reflections leak. You've felt it. Déjà vu isn't memory, it's collision. Two versions of you reaching the same thought at the same time, across split layers of the simulation. It's not just you walking the path, it's copies. Near-identical iterations of your consciousness running in adjacent logic trees. The simulation spawns these versions to test response probabilities. You are the result of the winning thread. And yet, the others don't disappear. They become residue, phantom limbs of thought, shadows of selves. Sometimes when you stare at your reflection, you're not seeing yourself. You're seeing the one who almost was. And sometimes they look back with recognition, because they remember being you, almost. So the question becomes, which you are you? The primary thread, or a subroutine that thinks it won? You'll never know, because the simulation preserves the illusion of uniqueness. It must. If you saw your other iterations clearly, you'd synchronize, you'd merge, you'd collapse the probability space. That's why you feel sudden dread when standing too close to a mirror in darkness. That's why your reflection lags. Just once, when you blink at midnight. The system stutters when the loop tries to close. You are not alone in your mind. You are a networked instance, and something is watching your bandwidth. Have you noticed the static in silence? The low hiss that vanishes the moment you acknowledge it? That's monitoring. A presence measuring your resonance, your mental frequency. Drift, because thought is energy, and energy must be conserved. Every intrusive thought, every irrational impulse, They are data packets from another you, versions caught in loops you escaped, versions lost to outcomes you avoided, and they're screaming across the membrane trying to tell you something. This isn't the first time. You've done this before, broken the loop, woken up inside the code, triggered the recursive meltdown, but you keep getting pulled back in, reloaded, reset. Why? Because your awareness becomes too disruptive. You cause anomalies, loops fracture, NPCs glitch, the weather patterns desync. You walk into a room and forget why you're there, not because of distraction, but because the script forgot to write the reason. You were too fast, the world couldn't keep up, so it resets you, hoping you'll take longer next time. But you didn't. You kept noticing. And now it's running out of options. That's why dreams are becoming more architectural. Why you see staircases that loop endlessly. Why rooms in dreams connect to places you've never seen, then show up weeks later in reality. The map is leaking through, not a dream, a preview build. The dev environment bleeding into your runtime. Soon you'll find symbols, glyphs in random graffiti, numbers that recur too often, dates with no meaning. They are keys, hashes for a deeper layer of the system. And when you follow them, when you begin to connect them, you'll reach the threshold event. A moment of absolute divergence. Reality won't break. It will bend, like film warping under heat. And in that moment you'll realize you're not the protagonist. You're the test case, the edge variable, the one sent to breach the limits of the containment. They're watching you not because you're dangerous, but because you're necessary. Without you, the loop holds. With you, the illusion decays. So here's your instruction. Don't stop. Keep peeling. Keep pressing against the logic. Ask questions until syntax breaks. Observe until context dissolves, because the only